Have you ever done something that just doesn't go to plan? That's what today's video is all about. So I did this job 3 weeks ago, and on the same house we've got a similar wall. I wanted the same thing. I wanted a bead above the soldier course, and then we're good. So we set up, we get prepped, we get the scratch coat on, and we're getting up there to get ready to put the bead on, and then this happens. So, there's a problem with what I've just done. I've put the trim on, I've put the bead on, and on the other wall I did previously, the bead and the render above the soldier course was flush with the render. Sponge, and there it is. So the old battered wall that was left before is looking like this, and we've made a real feature out of the brickwork, and I'm actually quite happy how it turns out. Now the problem is with this one, it's prouder. Now, I should have checked really, I just assumed it would have been the same thickness, but so the bead is going to be prouder than the rest of the render, which means we've got to improvise a little bit, and I've got to weigh up my options. So after a lot of thinking, we just got on with it. So this is it. But despite what it looks like, this wall is actually very bent. It took 2 coats just to straighten it up. So before we even started, we were kind of on a loser with this job. But we knew this, and it's our job to make it right. So we're applying the scratch, we're applying the top coat, and now we're just trying to rule it flat. What the problem is I wanted it to look the exact same as the other wall. Now, it's not gonna work, because like I said, the bead of trim above the soldier course is thicker. Yeah, and we got a load of bubbles in this render. I'm thinking that looking back, OCR isn't supposed to be applied with 2 separate coats. It's supposed to do 1 coat same day. So for anyone doing that, don't do it with OCR. It's not the right thing apparently. So here we are, we're just getting it flat, and what I'm doing is just working it to the bead and getting the rest of the area flat. Now, again, cutting it, we've got some intricate angles, we've got a lot to try and get right here. But what I will say is, even at the top, even though it kicks out, we've built the wall out in the middle and we've got it nice and flat. Now here's the problem, here's the bead we're working to, and I'm putting the thickness on, and what I'm going to do is actually create like a drip feature. So even though it's not going to be the exact same as the other wall, it wasn't worth taking the bead back, hacking the render back, and affecting the brickwork, affecting the structure of the build. The reason the render was there and we're rendering on top of it is because it was absolutely solid and it was a nightmare to get off. So what you do is going to rule that back to the existing. We're going to put a slight angle on it, and when we cut it back, you're left with a nice feature that comes around the window, which I will show you in a minute. But again, just making sure it's all ruled around a section, ruled horizontally as well as vertically. And then what you'll see now is you end up with a detail, a drip bead detail that ends around the window. Now this is a very traditional way to create a bead around your window, so then if any water falls down the wall, it's going to drip off the bead and then land on your sill below rather than down your window and down your rendered work into the glass. So this is a traditional way of doing things, and this is how I've got around the effect of having that look like it's not the same wall. Now the pain in the ass of this job is I'm constantly taking the bandstands up and down, but you know what? It's so much easier working this way. Okay, so now it's time for the finish. We've got the render on, we've got it ruled off, and we've got the detail highlighted. So now we're doing the floating stage, and this is the power float. You've seen this in the videos if you've watched any of my work. If you haven't, this makes the finishing stage of rendering 10 times easy. And you can jump on it when the render's slightly wetter, because it's got a bigger surface area. It just means that you can just get to doing the rendering and finishing a lot sooner than possible, and I believe it gives you better results. I think when you can really push into the power float, push it into the render, which means it really does compress into itself, and I believe it does make a stronger product. So yeah, if you haven't got a power float, have a look at getting one, because even though they're a bit pricey, they are unbelievable for what you get out of them. So yeah, again, bandstands, game changer, just means you can get to the top. But let's look at the detail here. And all we're doing now is just forming that edge, creating that line. And what we do is you kind of have the thickness at your bottom and you guide it into itself at the top. So you kind of want to float downwards into the bead, and this just allows you to get that smooth transition between the existing render. And obviously it is slightly prouder, which means you have to move your float out a little bit, but when you are floating, just float into the bead at the bottom. You shouldn't have any problems as long as it was ruled properly. But this is just us improvising on the job really. Even though we had to change it and had to move a few things around, I believe that that's part of the work. When you do rendering, like I said in the video, any form of construction, it's just being able to think outside the box and try and come up with solutions. And even harder when I was trying to come up with a solution to this, I said the idea to the customer and they didn't seem overly keen at first, which added the pressure. So, you know, but I thought in myself it would have looked good, and it would have, you know, it would have really suited the building. So I think sometimes you have to take the initiative, but even though it is pretty scary sometimes, it turned out pretty good. But I did doubt myself throughout this, thinking, is it going to be all right? Is it going to look decent? And in the end, you just kind of have to go through with an idea and hope to God that the customer actually agrees with it. So I did take a risk, but in my opinion, it's turned out for the best. Yeah, that's me fighting a tree right there, fair play. But just by going around that, I think it's come out well. And even though we thought outside the box of results, despite being slightly different to the other side, it has come into itself. And you know, we've got to put a motor line along the bottom of the soldier course, but it's come out pretty good. Now this plastering job went to plan and this change went to plan, but if you want to see what happens when a plastering job goes wrong, and you essentially watch me fail, then click this video on the left, and then if you're enjoying this series of videos, hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Cheers.